Hi, I'm Jamie Guidell, and this is your practice tip for today. A tune a day for flute, book 1, is excellent for learning the flute. I highly recommend it. On page 22, it introduces eighth notes in 3/4 time. First, I will talk about 3/4 time and then show you eighth notes and dotted quarter followed by an eighth note. 3/4 time is sometimes tricky for students. It's 3 beats to a measure and should be counted 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But sometimes people tend to say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Do you see what the problem is with that? You've added an extra beat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You are actually counting 4 with a silent 1 at the end. The solution to that problem is to say a big 1, a little 2, and a little 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And instantly the problem will be solved. When we have eighth notes, we need to count the upbeat. So for every downbeat, there's an upbeat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. We say and on the upbeat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. You keep the big 1, little 2 and little 3, but you say and on the upbeat. When you are playing flute or most instruments, not piano because you need your feet for the pedal, but for most instruments, you can tap your foot, and it's very helpful for learning rhythm. Starting with quarter notes and eighth notes, it seems simple, but this habit will enable you to learn more complicated rhythms and instantly know where they fall in the downbeat and the upbeat. Eighth notes either have a flag, or if there are 2 or more, they are joined with a bar across the top. If you are counting a series of eighth notes and your foot is going down and up, and you are in a 3/4 time, so you want to emphasize the 1, the first beat. If this is your foot, the counting of the notes will go 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. So this series of notes will sound like ta 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 ta. If you are tapping your foot, the tapping of the foot looks like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. If I play this rhythm on the flute on a 5-note G scale, G, A, B, C, D, and back down, C, B, A, G, it will sound like this. I'm tapping my foot. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and In A Tune a Day, Book 1 for Flute, on page 22, number 1, parts C, D, and E have combinations of quarter notes and eighth notes. The way I suggest that you practice it is to tap your foot and count 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and for a couple of measures, and then on the next beat say the letter names of the notes as you tap your foot, like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and G, 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 A, B, 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 C, 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 D, 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 D. This is the pattern that's used in part C. Ba, 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 ba. A quarter note is a down and an up. Ba. Or you can say G. 2 eighth notes on G are G, G. 1 note on the downbeat, 1 note on the upbeat. Then I suggest that you play it on the flute. Always count a couple of measures before you start tapping the foot. Continue tapping your foot and come in on the next beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and the last note is a dotted half note. It gets 3 beats, a full measure. Ba. Next is part D, which has this rhythm: 2 eighth notes and 2 quarter notes. So it will be ba, 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 ba. First point to the notes, tapping your foot, and say the letter names for part D. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and G, 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 A, B, 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 C, 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 D, 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 and so forth. Finish the line. Now, tap your foot and play, always counting a couple of measures before you start. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and the next pattern for part E. 1/4 note, 2/8, and a quarter. Ba, 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 ba. I will count and tap my foot and then point to the notes in time, naming the letters of the notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and G, 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 A, 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 B, 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 C, 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 D, 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 and so forth. Now, I will tap my foot, count before I start, and then play the notes, continuing to tap my foot. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and What do you think would happen if we tied the first two notes of this pattern that you just played? Try it and see if you can tap your foot and play it correctly. If you played it like this and counted it like this, you were correct. Ba, ba, ba. This leads to part F in Tune a Day on page 22. The quarter note tied to an eighth note gets one beat, a down up, and a down, because this will be up, a downbeat of an eighth note, 1.5 beats. It can also be written this way: a dotted quarter note, a quarter note with a dot after it. The dot adds a half a beat, because a dot after a note always adds half the value of the note. So the quarter note part of it gets one beat, down, up, and the dot gets the next downbeat. Then the next eighth note gets an upbeat. And remember that I told you that an eighth note can have a flag, or if there are two of them, they can have a bar across the top. So this is a single eighth note here. This is counted 1 and 2. This is and on the upbeat, and then a quarter note is following it, 3 and. So this rhythm, whether you are reading it like this or like this, would be played like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. In part F on page 22, this rhythm is shown, and that is how you play it. I'm going to tap my foot and say the note names for part F. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and G, 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 A, A, B, 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 C, 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 D, 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 and finish the line. Now I will play it on the flute, counting before I start and tapping my foot. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and have fun practicing.